In this Clair Obscur Expedition 33 guide, we're going to be taking a look at the best Pictos and Luminas in the game. I'm going to go through a lot of these. I don't have every single one in the game, but I have most of them. And I kind of want to go through like what to consider when selecting Pictos and Luminas. And obviously this is going to vary a little bit from character to character, and we have character guides that kind of goes into this a little bit. But there are certain ones that are just good on any character, so we're going to get into that. And we're going to get into whether you should slot it as a Picto or a Lumina and things like that. So the primary difference between Pictos and Luminas is that Pictos come with stat bonuses on them, and you can only have 3 of them slotted at a time. And early on in the game, you're going to be looking for Pictos that kind of match the playstyle of your character, but later on, you're going to be selecting them mostly because either A, they have very good stats like high critical chance, high speed, high health, or because the Lumina version just costs so much Lumina points to slot that it's better to have it as a Picto and save yourself all those Lumina points. For instance, like Clair's Life, Cheater, Energy Master, there's a lot of them, Energizing Start 4, that have very high Lumina costs that you just don't want to have. Combo Attack 3 is 30. Like, it would be better off, and assuming the stats are good, to have them slotted as a Picto and save those points if you can. Sometimes your Pictos just get out-leveled by better Pictos and you switch them out, but they will upgrade throughout the game. You will get higher and higher versions of the same Pictos. So even if you have to swap one out temporarily because you outgrow the stats with better Pictos, eventually you might be able to come back to it. Now, without a doubt, the best 2 stats you can get on Pictos are speed and critical chance. These are the best. They will not only make you play more, they'll make you play sooner, they'll make you crit more, and that in turn provides you a lot of other effects. Health is also really good if you are not a great player, right? Like, if all things are considered and you're actually really good at parrying, you're good at counterattacking, you're gonna benefit more from speed and critical chance. Whereas if you have a tendency to struggle with new enemies and it takes you a while to get their parry timing down, that's where health really comes in, gives you time to kind of learn the parry rhythm of certain attacks from new enemies. So I do like mixing and matching these, especially when some of the boss encounters of the game, they have lots and lots of attacks and you're just not going to memorize them quickly. Those are the scenarios where health can really benefit you. And I will say that sometimes in the game, I will just slot Pictos that have high stats, even if I don't care about the bonus that they provide in terms of its Lumina bonus, because I just like having those high stats, and then I can just use my Lumina points in order to, pick up the effects that I want there. And I will say too, when you spend your Lumina points, you should spread them around between all of your characters. There are points in the game where you will play different characters, and if you totally spec out 3 of your characters and you forget some of the other ones, then you may be faced with a scenario where you're having a tough time for certain stretches of the game. So the first one we're going to take a look at is Dead Energy. You get this really early on in the game. This is best slotted on every character. It's only 2 Lumina cost, which is not bad at all, and it gives you AP when an enemy dies. And every character can just benefit from more AP. You're fighting multiple enemies pretty much the majority of the game, except in boss scenarios. And even in boss scenarios, you're only wasting 2 Lumina points to keep this slotted if you don't go unslotted. So it's good to have on every character from basically the very beginning of the game. So make sure you have Dead Energy. That can really help with your AP management throughout combat. The next one we'll take a look at is Augmented Counter 1, 2, and 3. These are really strong in my opinion. If you can get parry timing down in this game, you can deal out almost more damage. I would say you actually deal out more damage probably for the first 50% of the game through counterattacks than you do from actually attacking with your skills. So boosting your counterattack damage on all of your characters is not a bad idea if you're good at parrying, if you're not using dodges as much, but only if you're good at parrying, right? Like, this is very specific to a type of player that can get that down. But if you can get that down, you'll often just kill enemies on counterattacks, which is absolutely fantastic. And these don't cost a lot of Lumina points either. We're talking 3, 5, and 7. That is not super expensive. Another one that I like early on is Burn Affinity. This increases your damage against burning targets. There are so many synergies amongst the characters in this game that deal with burn, and so many skills that set burning, that this should almost be a must on every character. Like, it's maybe one character might not need it, but like, you're gonna set burning. Like, you can use Luna's Wildfire and set burning on everything instantly. Other characters in the game also can set burning with their skills very easily. So Burn Affinity is good on anybody just because typically everything is burning. Confident is one I also really like for maybe the first 50 to 75% of the game. It's quite expensive, so you're probably not going to be able to take it on all your characters. But what I generally find is in, the exploration areas, when you're not talking specifically about boss fights, you don't tend to need to heal. Like, you can kind of brute force your way through pretty much every combat without healing, and this just makes you take less damage. And, you can always top off outside combat when you need to with your elixirs, or you can use your revive tints in combat. If somebody goes down, just use a revive tint instead of healing. So this is a really strong one that I think you should consider putting on just about any character in the first 50 to 75% of the game where you really don't need to use healing. And it's the big downside of it is expensive. So consider slotting this as a Picto on one of your characters to save those 20 Lumina points. Next, we're going to take a look at Dodger. If you're bad at parrying or you simply can't get the parry timing down, Dodger is great to take. It's only 1 Lumina point per character, and it'll give you 1 extra AP on a perfect dodge once per turn. That might not sound like a lot, but every AP helps. Sometimes you're 1 AP short of a skill. So being able to get reliably just about 1 AP every round is really, really strong in my opinion, particularly for 1 Lumina point. Now, if you don't dodge and you just parry everything like I do, it's not particularly good, but if you are mixing up dodging and parrying, definitely consider it. The next ones we're going to take a look at are Energizing Start. There are, I believe, 4 of these in the game, and they essentially give you +1 AP on battle start, but they cost more and more Lumina points for each version you get. They do the same thing effectively, so you want to start off by slotting Energizing Start 1 on everybody before you move on to Energizing Start 2, or Energizing Start 3, Energizing Start 4, because they do the same thing. So you might as well save the Lumina points. But why these are so strong is AP is often the limiter for you using abilities, particularly in the first half of the game. And when you start the beginning of combat with a bigger AP pool, that you maybe grow a little bit from parries or counterattacks in combat, you will have more AP the following turn. So this just kind of gives you a bigger pool to build upon in order to use stronger and stronger abilities, or to lead off combat with a really strong skill that can just speed up the flow of combat. So all of these are really good. You definitely want to consider slotting these in the first half of the game until you have other ways to manage your AP. And Energizing Turn is even better, right? Like, this gives you +1 AP at turn start rather than combat start, so every turn you're going to get an extra AP. It's the same cost as Energizing Start 4, so slot this instead of Energizing Start 4 if you don't have the Lumina points. This is good on just about any character. Again, it's expensive, so it might be better as a Picto on one character in order to save your Lumina points until you get better Pictos. Next, we're going to take a look at Combo Attack. I think there are 3 of these in the game: Combo Attack 1, Combo Attack 2, and Combo Attack 3. This makes it so your base attacks have extra hits. This is good on some specific characters. It's not good on every character. You'll know which characters these are based on their weapons, usually, that reward them for a base attacks type strategy. But there are a lot of weapons in the game that reward base attacks, like you get stuff for base attacking, and this makes you hit an extra time, so that can be really strong. Like, if your base attack, if your weapon makes you apply burn or something, you can stack more burn that way, or maybe gives you charges, or maybe it does something else that increases your damage. Either way, the more you hit, the more you're going to build up. And you can pair it too with like Energizing Attack, which gives you +1 AP on base attack. So theoretically, you could just generate like tons of AP just from base attacking one turn, and then use a bunch of abilities the following turn. I also really like Energizing Parry. If you're good at parrying, this will allow you to generate an extra AP when you parry. And it's almost overkill. This is so strong in my opinion. If you can master parrying, then this is probably the only AP management that you'll need besides maybe like Energizing Start or Enter1 or Energizing Turn. Like, you won't need a ton of AP. There's so many weapons in this game that give AP, but Energizing Parry is really, really good if you're really good at parrying. Another really nice combo here is rewarding mark and marking shots, especially on a character. This isn't good on every character, but if you're one of your characters or a couple of your characters tend to free aim shot a lot because of the weapon that you're using or because of the style of play that you're using, being able to, hit many times, mark the target so it increases damage, and then also gain 2 AP for dealing damage to a marked target can really keep your AP up as well. So that's really strong, but it's only on specific characters that have a free aim shot playstyle. There are also a couple of other ones that are only good when you're fighting alone, like Solo Fighter and Last Stand Critical. You might think, why would I put these when I'm in a party like the whole time? They're very low Lumina costs, and depending on how good or bad you are at the game, sometimes one character might be the last character alive, and in that circumstance, they'll deal more damage and they'll have higher critical chance, things like that. So it's worth considering these on your characters if you have extra Lumina points, like a few, and there's just nothing else that's really good, but I wouldn't bump out something else for them. Weakness gain is also not bad, particularly if you're not using Energizing Parry in order to get more AP. You're always trying to hit an enemy's weakness. Not every character is going to be able to do this as much. Lune, for instance, has more of an opportunity to do this because she has so many different elements she can use, so she can almost always hit the elemental weakness of an enemy. But, you know, depending on what weapons you have equipped on other characters, this might be more difficult for them. So definitely would put this one on Lune and maybe, like, you know, one other character, but I don't know if I would put it on everyone. So those are basically the good early game ones. Now we'll talk a little bit about mid game ones. Base Shield is absolutely excellent. This is also a very expensive one, so definitely consider putting this as a Picto on one of your characters to save the 20 Lumina points. But this essentially gives you +1 shield if you're not affected by any shield on the start of turn. So, like, if you have a turn and you have no shield, it's at the beginning of your turn you gain a shield, and then on the enemy's turn, if they hit you once, that whole damage is negated by your shield, and on the following turn, you'll gain another shield back. This is really good at negating some really strong one-off attacks. Some bosses and enemies just have, like, an AoE that will screen clear, basically, and it can just nullify the whole thing, even if you don't parry or dodge, so it's really, really strong. You definitely want to get this on every one of your characters at some point. It will carry you through 95%, if not 99% of the game once you have it. Next, we're going to take a look at Auto Powerful. This applies Powerful for 3 turns at battle start. This increases your damage, and by just having more damage at the beginning of combat for 3 turns, combat's going to go quicker. You're going to get through combat faster. This is good on every character, in my opinion. Unless you have a skill that one of your characters is using that does this for you, you will basically want to have this on every character at some point. Beneficial Contamination is also really good for AP, particularly for burn. Like, if you can apply burn regularly, there are a lot of characters, I think every character pretty much can apply burn. So this is really good if you like to use skills that are applying burn, which is, you know, you should be using at least 1 or 2 characters that are. If you put it on them, then they're going to gain extra AP when they set a status effect, which will make them have more the following turn, which is really nice. Confident Fighter is also really strong. It increases your damage by 30%, but you can't be healed, especially if you're pairing this with Confident and you're not healing anyway, because then you'll have the damage mitigation and extra damage. And again, sometimes winning a fight is about dealing more damage than the enemy more quickly, and there's a lot of builds in this game where you can just, you know, screen clear before they even get a turn. So I highly recommend this one if you can, you know, if you're not worried about healing. I never really heal, so it's not really a thing. I just revive if things go down. So, but if you like healing, you definitely won't take this. But if you're already pairing it with Confident, it's definitely a good pairing. So the next one we're going to take a look at is First Strike. This allows you to make a character play first by equipping it. You'd think, well, which character should I put it on? Put it on all your characters, because all your characters can actually play before the enemy's turn if they have this equipped. It's not so necessary in the first half of the game, even though you can get this really early on, in my opinion. But as you get further and further into the game, and the enemies get more and more speed and they start playing more and more ahead of you, this can really just put you ahead. You're going to slot this on all your characters. You're going to leave it on. It's going to be good for you. Healing Counter and Healing Parry are absolutely excellent if you're good at parrying in this game, because they're just such a good way to heal you without having to spend a turn to heal. Now, obviously, if you're going the Confident strategy and the Confident Fighter strategy, this doesn't apply to you. But if you don't like those because you do like healing, this is a way for you to just kind of gradually heal yourself while you're playing naturally anyway without having to spend turns. And this is based on your max health, which is why I recommend Vitality to people in stats, and why having extra health on your Pictos is good, because the more health you have, the more healing you get out of these, which is nice. Obviously, Painted Power is one that you're going to need once you get it. As soon as it becomes available, you're going to have to master it and slot this on all of your characters. This is the only way to do more than 9,999 damage, so this is pretty much a must on every single character. And next we're going to take a look at Solidifying. This gives you +2 shields when the character's health falls below 50% once per battle. This is just good. Every battle you fight, like, you have a chance for this to happen, especially in boss fights, and those 2 shields are going to prevent 2 instances of damage, which is really strong. This is 10 Lumina points, which is middle of the road. It's not a lot later in the game. It's middle of the game, and there you're really gonna maybe have to make sacrifices for it. But I would consider slotting this one for like boss fights and then unslotting it if you don't have the Lumina points. But at some point, you're just probably gonna want to have this on every character. Now, once you start to get late game, this is where things get really interesting. Charging critical is extremely strong. This gives you plus 20% of a gradient charge on critical hit once per turn. If you have 3 turns with 3 characters, that's 60% per round that it fills on top of what it fills from everything else. This allows you to use some of the most powerful attacks in the game, like the homage and things like that. So you definitely want to have this on all your characters at some point so you can get those gradient charges fast. Next is Cheater. This one allows you to play twice in a row. So if you had this on every character, you could play 2 times in a row for each character. And if you had the one I just mentioned, Charging Critical, then you're going to get 140% charges. So you're going to get like 1.5 charges basically just from the very beginning. So you can really fill up your gradient counter charges, which is great. And Cheater's it's arguably the strongest, if not one of the strongest in the game. So once you get this, you're going to slot this on everyone. Again, putting one of these as a Picto is good because the Lumina cost is seriously expensive. Clay's life, in my opinion, is really good, but it's also not super necessary for most of the game. It just makes it so that if you haven't taken damage since last turn, you recover all of your health. And it's very expensive at 30 Lumina points, but you don't absolutely have to have it because you can heal outside of combat very easily. You get more and more elixirs to heal with, and generally you really don't need healing for a large portion of the game. Another really good one is Double Burn. This applies a second stack of burn whenever you apply one. So however much burn you're going to apply, you apply double. This is really good for certain characters that stack burn. And if you're going for a burn stacking build, you absolutely want this on each character. This one's also expensive at 30 Lumina points, so you might want to consider slotting this as a Picto on one of your characters. I also really like Glass Cannon in this game. My strategy tends to be deal as much damage as possible and don't worry about the damage I take, and then revive if I need to with either Lune's ability or Revive Tints. So a lot of times you can just make combat faster with more damage. So I really like this one. Longer burn is also really good. This makes it so that your burn duration is increased from 3 rounds to 5 rounds. This allows you to stack your burn up higher, getting even more and more damage, and to keep that on enemies longer. If you're going for any sort of burn build on a character, double burn, longer burn are pretty much musts. Another one we're going to take a look at is Shielding Death. This makes it so on death, allies gain 3 shield points. This is really strong. Because you have Revive Tints in this game, and because you have Lune's Revive in combat, sometimes it's just better to let your allies die than spend a turn healing, and this absolutely ensures that's the case. Because if they die and they have this, they'll just put 3 shields on your other 2 characters, which will prevent 3 sources of damage each for those characters. And then if you revive them and somehow another character dies and they have this, they'll drop even those shields again on that character. So this is really, really good. I highly recommend getting this on any character if you have the Lumina points, but at least one character. And then lastly, I should have mentioned it earlier, but Breaking Death is really strong, particularly in boss fights. This makes it so if you die, you fully break the bar of an enemy so you can stun them with a breaking skill. This is really good for hard fights where you can just die quickly and basically break them on turn 1. And it also makes it so the more you struggle in a fight, you sort of do better, right? Because if your character dies and then their full break bar is completely full, then you actually got an advantage from dying. So it's really nice against hedging your bets in difficult fights. So that kind of wraps up my video for best Pictos and best Luminas. As always, you definitely want to keep improving your stats as you go throughout the game and selecting Pictos that have higher and higher stats. Sometimes this will not match some of these that I mentioned just because the stats are better than what you have markedly, and you may have to come back around to some of these when you get better versions of them later in the game. But in terms of Luminas, you want to make sure you have all the Luminas that you can get, and you want to make sure that high Lumina point ones you have the Pictos for if you can. Are these some of your favorite Pictos? Did I leave any out? Are there other Luminas I should have mentioned? Let me know in the comments below.